10 seconds.
Broadcasting across the state of Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and around the world on the Civic Media app. This is the Dom Salvia Show. And now, here's your host, Dom Salvia.
And welcome to the Dom Salvia Show. Thank you for listening. Happy days to us all. You can be a big part of this program anytime. Talk or text 855-752-4842. Got Jess PS on the board trying to keep me in line. All you can do is try,
It's a
Jess.
hard job.
And it's
how do you do it?
It's overtime
Well.
with Maggie Dawn. You heard her right there. How do you do it? How you doing, Maggie Dawn? Thank you for joining me. You can check out her show preceding this one here, 2 to 4 p.m. on the Civic Media Radio Network. Wow, Maggie, welcome. A lot going on.
What are you talking about? There's been no news.
There's no news.
No news.
There's a little news. There's a little news. In fact, Civic Media's own reporter, Lisa Hale, President Trump signs pardons for Pulaski man for January 6 actions. And not only that cat, also 10 others from the state of Wisconsin. Trump said, this is January 6th, and these are hostages, approximately 1,500 for a pardon. Full pardon. As Lisa reports, one of those pardoned is Riley Casper of Pulaski, who was sentenced to 37 months in prison for assaulting police officers at the Capitol. The Department of Justice says Casper bragged on social media about his actions that day. I pepper sprayed 3 cops so bad they got undressed and went home, Casper wrote. Now, he was arrested in March of 23 and was sentenced to prison on February 6th of 24, currently being held near Ann Arbor in Michigan, and he is going to be released. Pepper sprayed 3 cops so bad they got undressed and went home, and according to Donald Trump, that deserves a full pardon, Maggie Dawn.
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. We're the law and order party, and we back the blue. Unless, apparently there's a really big exception to the we back the blue thing. Every single sign now that I see in somebody's yard, I'm going to want to pull over, knock on their door and be like, so what do you think about the J6 pardons? We're recording now. Back the blue, except unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. And I've been trying to come up. And folks, if you want to play along with me, that'd be great too. We got to come up with a new description of the mega party, the Republican Party. I mean, they used to be the party of law and order. But now maybe give them the pardons and the attitude of the new mega. Maybe it's the party of assault and battery. You know what I mean? Let's come up with. I want to hear some. 855-752-4842. The party of assault and battery.
The ABCs of MAGA. Assault and battery and corruption.
Oh, yes. There we go. We're coming up. This is great. I love it. The ABCs. We'll stop there because I don't know how many of the megas can spell. Yeah, I said it. Maggie Dawn, this is very troublesome. And as Jess and I were preparing for the show today, she's like, Donald Trump doing this. And I'm like, well, he never really committed to not doing it, right? It was always other people saying, oh, he's not going to do that. It was always other people. It was always surrogates. It was J.D. Vance.
It was Vance, it was Bondi, but he did say in the only interview following the election that he was going to do this on a case-by-case basis. And then, of course, he didn't. I called him during my show before this great program, the Oprah Winfrey of pardons. A pardon for you! A pardon for you! A pardon for you! Maybe a commutation for you over here, but to the same effect.
To the same effect. And some of the reporting that I'm seeing, Senate Republicans have mixed reactions to Trump pardons for January 6th offenders. And I'm not going to dive into it with you. Perhaps we'll get to it a little bit later. Senator Tommy Tuberville said he's never seen video of rioters beating police. He was like totally down with the pardons.
Then he fired Tommy.
But he's not.
It's like Pam Bondi. I didn't listen to the phone call of Donald Trump shaking down the election official in Georgia and asking for votes and committing all sorts of crimes. No, I didn't listen to the call. Well, don't you think you should, Tommy and Pam? Maybe check out the facts? so lame. I am so sick of listening to Republicans say over and over, well, I didn't hear him say that. I haven't listened to the tape. Well, maybe you should. And even if you didn't, what about given these facts, like that we watched people beat up on cops? Is that you're good with that, Tommy? Go back to coaching football.
Yeah, and we've heard this all before. And folks, you're listening to the Dom Salvia Show. It's Overtime with Maggie Dunn. You can check her show out 2 to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday right here on the Civic Media Radio Network. A little fired up on this, especially given the hypocrisy and the non-answers from these Republican senators. I just think if it was Black Lives Matter, all these folks that think about, we got to stand up for law and order. And I've heard some of the interviews of folks on the border kind of tie this all together. And they're like, hey, we're down with immigration. We want people, but, it's got to be done right. And if they're here without the proper paperwork, they're breaking the law. We don't like people breaking the law. But then you just voted for a guy who just pardoned all sorts of people, and some of them, sure, okay, you were trespassing, got caught up, whatever. I mean, even if they're on probation or not even doing any time, they get the pardons. But so did the folks that were literally beating police officers. That's against the law. And the guy you just supported, the guy and the party, let's just be frank about that. This is not just Donald Trump. This is everybody in that party, as far as I'm concerned, is partly responsible for this action. You can no longer call yourself the law and order party. I mean, and I could even go through some of the 11 Wisconsinites, Maggie, and say, yeah, maybe that's okay, whatever. Because if you didn't do any time anyway, if there was not assault and batteries involved, I get at least the philosophy. But you're downright beating cops with bats, and the president of the United States says, well, as long as you're doing that on my behalf, then it's okay. And that is a very scary precedent. Some of those Proud Boys, Enrico Tarrio, right? Seditious conspiracy, trying to overthrow the government. Well, as long as you were doing it on my behalf, we're fine with that.
Correct. Rules for thee, but never me. And it is purely transactional. Again, it's the two-tiered system of justice. The tiers aren't about Democrats and Republicans. What they are about is access, power, money, and influence. As long as you are able to enter into a transactional exchange with Donald Trump, you will get a different treatment under the justice system. That is what it is. People quote the Martin Niemöller poem so many times, and pardon me for butchering the pronunciation of the man's last name, but it's like, I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't care when they came for this. I wasn't a unionist, so I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't care. And then they came for me. Like, when is this not okay? It's just absolutely ridiculous. And remember, our history here can teach us so very much. President Andrew Johnson pardoned almost all of the Confederates after the Civil War. And you know what they did? They entrenched white supremacy and white power, right? They went back, they framed up Jim Crow, they called all of the Reconstruction policies anti-white, right? They used the very language of MAGA today. And then they turned it into, right, it's the entire rewriting of the Civil War, right? Oh, it wasn't about slavery, the enslavement of human beings. It was about Northern aggression, right? The rewriting of history, which we still have to contend with today. They banned books. They tried to ban people who spoke the truth. They built Jim Crow on all of this lies and garbage. They then engaged in lynchings and put their Confederate flags back up, right? Like, this has happened before. And so the response, we can look to the history to understand the response. If you say, I'm not a racist, I don't believe in those things, then you can't defend the J6 pardons. Not a single person that I know that was ever charged of any crime related to BLM ever was pardoned, right? None of that. No cop died from those encounters.
And what would the reaction be, Maggie, if that were to happen? Of course, it did not happen. Biden's out, took care of his family. Didn't pardon any of the BLM folks.
Nope.
And
it would have been death. People would have been calling for capital punishment. Of course they would have.
And I don't think that those pardons would be warranted. If you're engaging in burning down buildings, and listen, I get riots get out of hand. Most of them, the largest percentage of those were nonviolent. You know, there are. It was just, but the comparison, Maggie.
Well, and I've said this with you before, and I said it on January 6th, by the way, when I was on with you and your former broadcasting partner. I literally said, Black Lives Matter is based on a legitimate policy question, which is, why is it okay for cops to kill unarmed Black people? Why was it okay for Derek Chauvin to be the judge, the jury, and the executioner? It's not. That's murder. That has to stop. We have to rebuild the trust between communities that are policed and police. That is a legitimate public policy debate. January 6th is a bunch of baloney. I wish I could use other words, but the FCC would be ticked off at me. Right? Like, one is a legitimate, there was a movement, there were protests. The other one is a bunch of angry white people fed lies and garbage and willing to inhale it all and believe it. Like, that is the first and foremost. And we talked about it that day. If that was a bunch of Black folks storming the Capitol, protesters, in addition to the one, many would have been shot and killed by police.
That is Maggie Dawn. This is Overtime with Maggie Dawn on the Dom Salvia Show. We're going to kind of run up against a break here. And callers, I see you, Paul, Dick. Stick around. I'll make sure we give you guys enough time to speak on this. The Republican senators, the Law and Order Party, Tom Tillis, a senator, distances himself from the pardons. I just can't agree with it. I find it hard to believe the president or you would look at the facts and used to convict the people on January 6th and say it was an intemperate moment. I just can't agree. Well, great, but what is the consequence of that?
Yeah, so what now?
I mean, so what?
Right.
So nothing now. So nothing now. And Donald Trump, ultimately he does not get another chance if we believe in our Constitution and our democracy to run again. So he has zero to lose. There is not, if there ever was any political consequence to any of the things that this man has done, but there's going to be no consequence to this. So what we need to do, in my opinion, is lay this at the feet of every single Republican, every single MAGA. This is how it is. I mean, think about, like, locally, you've got 11 people in the state of Wisconsin who were pardoned by Donald Trump. One of them was doing 37 months for pepper spraying cops so bad they had to run home and take off their clothes. That's what you guys are supporting. Though we have to make them defend that. Hey, Robin Voss, Ron Johnson, if that cat was pepper spraying you, what would your reaction be? Come back with us, 855-752-4842. Paul and Dick, you will be next. Overtime with Maggie Dawn.
'Maggie, I was getting a text in about your sound, and I was also hearing it too. You sound a little tinny. Can you just check your mic settings, make sure that
the
correct
problem.
mic is picking it up?
Of course it's not. That would be why. There we go. We should sound...
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Check.
All good. All right.
Thank you.
Problem solved.
It's like I was just on my StreamYard, literally same browser window. Makes no sense. Like, zero
Happens.
sense. Yeah.
"30 seconds. 10 seconds. Bunch of texts coming in.
Right about now, NWA court is in full effect. Judge Dre residing. In the case of NWA versus the police department, prosecuting attorneys are MC Ren, Ice Cube, and Easy Motherfucking E. Order. Ice Cube, take the motherfucking stand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help your black ass? Damn right. Won't you tell everybody what the you gotta say? The police coming straight from the underground.
And welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show, Overtime with Maggie Dawn. Check her show out right here at the Civic Media Radio Network, Monday through Friday, 2 to 4 p.m. We have Attorney General from the great state of Wisconsin, Josh Call, going to join us at the bottom of the hour. Right now, we're going to take some calls, 855-752-4842. Coming up with new names for the Republican Party. They cannot be the party of law and order. Perhaps they're a party of assault and battery, the ABCs of the party, right? Assault, battery, and corruption. Thank you, Maggie Dawn. Or perhaps they're just the NWA party, the F the police party, because that's essentially what Donald Trump said and did today. 11 people from the state of Wisconsin have been pardoned. One of them doing 37 months for pepper spraying cops so bad they had to, quote, go home and take their clothes off. We have a retired law enforcement officer, apparently has some comments on this. Paul from Spooner, you are up. Welcome, Paul. What do you got for us?
Well, I don't know what to say here. The question was, what are we going to call this party? And it is clearly the party of Trump. The Republicans have no control whatsoever. What they've done with these 1,500 people is Donald Trump has now created an armed militia that will do his work for him because they have already demonstrated what they will do for Donald. So when we go to these on that guy back there, I'll guarantee you that guy will get dumped on. So really, you can point out all the hypocrisy you want about this man, but these people simply don't care. They voted for him. They knew what he was going to do when they voted for him, and this is what we're going to get. So the question now is, I don't know what you're going to get to get the party back or what you should name them, but it is clearly the party of Trump. It's a dictator, and it's a much more dangerous world we live in today because of the rhetoric that this man does. I mean, I'm nervous about myself that he might start pointing fingers at me because of my political views and things I've done in my community. There's people in my community that refuse to talk to me, but I'll tell you what, if these people knew they could do something and get away with it, it's dangerous to imagine what they can do. I mean, this started with the Bundy Ranch out in Nevada years ago when there was a call to arms. People fell right in line and did what they're supposed to do. And that's the world we live in now.
And that's the world we should never accept, Paul. Government-sanctioned violence, not only against other citizens, but against the uniformed police officers, Paul. Maggie, I guess I'm a little. What are your thoughts on the caller from Paul?
I agree with him. I mean, I linked together during my show before yours today the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which Donald Trump invoked and said he was going to basically reinvigorate, which allowed and led to one of the darkest moments in our nation's history, the internment of Japanese Americans, and all of Trump's rhetoric. And you tie that to effectively sanctioning violent roving mobs. And I asked people, if you're not a person of color, imagine that you were. Imagine that you spoke with an accent, and now place yourself among and within one of those roving mobs. Are you more or less safe today because of Donald Trump's pardons? And the answer is, I am less safe today. And that is an abomination.
855-752-4842, Overtime with Maggie Dawn. Let's get to Dick on the lines. Welcome, Dick. What do you got for us?
Well, real quick to Tommy Tuberville. I'm sure he played at one point in his career, but obviously without a helmet for several years. But the party of legalized mayhem.
Yeah.
Because they've made all this stuff legal in their mind.
Yep.
And in support of a specific political and well, a person. Let's just be frank about it. It's not just like random chaos of mayhem. These are folks that engaged in this behavior and these actions at the bequest of and the request of Donald Trump. Come here, we'll be wild. And to the points, what kind of message does this give off? I mean, when you have Enrico Tarrio and these cats that were convicted of seditious conspiracy, doing 20 years, I think Rhodes was doing 22 years, something like that. Stuart Rhodes from the Oath Keepers. His son testified against him. Do you think how is his son feeling right now? The QAnon shaman guy, I saw him. Apparently, he posted some things like he can't wait to go out and get himself some guns. God bless America. I love this country. I was like, what, dude? What are you gonna take those guns and go shoot some cops? Because, I mean, all you folks were attacking them before. It is just, what does this portend going forward? And while I disagree to some degree with our caller Paul, the Republicans can do something about this. Now, maybe not specifically on these pardons right now, but this is a separate co-legal branch of government. The Republicans in Congress, they can do something. You want to have this albatross around your neck? You want to be the party of assault and battery? Because that's what you are right now. And the message you are sending is that, yes, this is now a legalized mob? Right? Are these cats going to go join in the internment camps for the migrants now? Is that where we're going? Is that how this is going? Because if there's not going to be a consequence to violent action against police officers, you know what I mean? The fact that I got to defend this against the law and order party, Maggie, the world is bizarro world right now.
It is on its head, and it is on its face indefensible, right? But we've gone so far beyond any actual fidelity to principles, right? Like, it's indefensible on any principled basis.
Well, if you're not me, girl. You know what I mean? Well, that's my problem.
Well, you're pointing to the hypocrisy of the MAGA party, right? You cannot in one breath say that you're the party of law and order, and in the next breath, pardon people who violently attacked police officers.
Right.
But the constant response that I hear from conservatives, whether they're texting or calling, is, but what about, but what about, but what about, but what about, but what about? And my response to them is, when did I ever say that beating cops was okay? Can you please let me know when you heard a Democrat say that? Please point to the someone that was convicted of destroying a building or engaging in physical violence during a BLM protest. When did you see them pardoned? Even their purported equivalencies are false, spurious, and completely beside the point. It's like, oh, well, Dems get money from billionaires too. Doesn't make it right. Can we just say that's bad and agree on that? And it's nearly impossible to extract the most basic value-driven agreements from conservatives these days.
Maggie Dawn, check her out 2 to 4. Josh Call, Wisconsin AG, coming up next.
Police. Police.
30 seconds.
And welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show, 855-752-4842, 855-75-CIVIC. We are eagerly awaiting an interview with Wisconsin's Attorney General Josh Kaul. He has signed on to a lawsuit, according to the Journal Sentinel, to seeking to block Trump's birthright citizenship order. There are several lawsuits out there waiting on Josh to chime in on it. We'll eagerly await his call. In the meantime, we'll take your calls and your text, 855-752-4842. Some of the texters, you guys are blowing us up. I appreciate it. And normally, Wisco, I see you there. Normally we go to the callers first, but these things are lining up. Joshua from Wausau, with Trump showing such disrespect towards the police when he travels around the country during his presidency, they should just stay home and let him deal with his own crap. Well, I appreciate the sentiment, man. You kind of, you reap what you sow attitude. But, that's the thing about service. These folks, and I heard some of the senators in Washington, D.C. being interviewed by the media today. When getting the sound wasn't great in the hallway. Basically saying, well, no, I haven't talked to the Capitol Police, and, they're professionals and they'll do their job. I surely have nothing to say. Well, and that's the point. They're there for the service, and they're there to do their job. But I bet they have an opinion, Senator, on what they think about the folks that Donald Trump especially the violent ones, that were beating the cops, that were beating up those guys. The thin blue line, all you folks say that you support the police. Well, what about now? How can Donald Trump do it? And we get the hypocrisy. But again, we're not going to change what Donald Trump did, and these folks are going to, go on. Should they be pariahs? Should these folks from the state of Wisconsin? We got 11 of them here, folks. We got 11. We know what we do around here. We name the names. Kevin Loftus, Loftus, from Eau Claire. What did Kevin do? In October of 21, he pleaded guilty to partying, demonstrating, and picketing at the Capitol building. Sentenced to 3 years probation, 60 hours of community service in order to pay restitution. Then we remember this guy who's arrested in Iowa for violating terms of his probation. All right, now this guy wasn't specifically beating cops, but you still violated your probation. You know why a lot of folks go back to jail? It's for violating probation. Let's see what else we got here. January 6th wasn't the first and not more acceptable as the mega party. What else do we have? As a conservative, says a 608er, I am very much against the terribly troubling conduct of the rioters. That includes not only January 6, 2021. Yeah, man, conservative buddy, I get you. And that's the thing about the riots. Ultimately, they don't really push the issues forward. It's an expression, right? It doesn't bode well for the communities as well. But man, emotion sometimes gets the better of people. Sometimes there's agitators in the crowd. That was like the case in Minneapolis. A guy from Texas, like a conservative dude, came up, started busting stuff up, breaking windows. You know what I'm saying? So, but when you get agitators into crowds that are already fired up, that can get worse. And again, if we're talking about some trespassers, not a big deal. Now, should you pay the price? Yeah, man. Why do you get a pass? Because Trump asked you there to break the law, so you get a pass? That's not right. And I think most folks can look at something like this and objectively think that. But here in the state of Wisconsin, David Mish from West Allis, right up the street, David. Mm-hmm. What did David do? Well, he pled guilty to parading, demonstrating. Other charges were dismissed, sentenced to 30 days in jail in order to pay $500 restitution. According to court records, he contacted police a day after the text said he had information about the death of Ashley Babbitt. Okay. So did he do his time? Not at this point. He probably did his 30 days already.
Mhm.
So just wiping the sentence. But I don't think that David Mish from West Allis could get a pass. Man, I mean, other people get in trouble, have to do 30 days in the hole. They even wrote a song about it. Does David get a pass? Like socially?
I mean, he shouldn't.
I mean, at least bust some chops. You know what I mean? And this is, one of the folks that didn't engage in the quote unquote violence. I mean, literally the violence. How about Michael Fitzgerald? He's from Janesville. I think they can hear us down there in Janesville. You know Michael from Janesville? He pled not guilty to all of his charges: obstructing an officer, entering or remaining on restricted grounds, violent entry, and disorderly conduct. What about him? Oh, here's a couple from La Crosse, my old stomping grounds.
One of them.
You know I love La Crosse. They pled guilty to parading, demonstrating, or picketing. They were sentenced to serve 2 years probation, ordered to pay $500 in restitution. Again, no harm, no foul, perhaps. But Riley Casper. This is the guy.
Our pepper sprayer.
Civil disorder, assaulting and resisting a police officer, engaging in violence, entering and remaining in a restricted building, committing acts of physical violence on the Capitol grounds.
He
pled guilty to assaulting, resisting, or impeding the officer. Sentenced.
pled guilty
He pled guilty. I did that. Yeah, he did it, man, because you know how of course he's going to plead guilty. He put on Facebook,
He was
pepper
proud of
sprayed
it.
3 cops so bad they got undressed and went home. Well, yeah, that was me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now Riley gets to get away with it.
Of course.
So if you're, any of you police officers, any of you Republicans, any of you megas, if anyone ever comes up and pepper sprays you in the face, do you think that's a worthy charge? Is that assault? You got a problem with that? How would you feel if that happened? A trial was found, the person pled guilty to do it, and then a Democratic president just said, pardon them. That's okay, because the person they pepper sprayed, they were doing that for me. That's for me. 855-752-4842. What do we got here? Did you just bump F the police by NWA after stating it's not okay to beat the cops? Yeah,
Yes, we did.
Todd from De Pere, because that's the new attitude of the megas, brother. F the police. It's no longer
That's
the
what they're
party
saying?
of law and order. It's a party of assault and battery. That's the party, man. So consider it their walk-up music. And me being the calm and collective one, am just pointing it out. I would encourage those folks. I mean, come in. Didn't Snoop went over to Mega, right? No, you didn't hear that, right?
Didn't.
Did you Google it?
No,
Oh, yeah,
I've been a little busy.
Yeah, people have been mad. Snoop going. But, if you're going to take on
It breaks
Snoop,
my heart.
you can embrace NW. I didn't see Ice Cube or Dr. Dre doing anything yet. And, Easy MFE, he passed away a while ago. And the other cats, I don't remember the names. It's been so long. But yes, Todd from De Pere, we played that because that is the mentality, the attitude of the folks right now. The Proud Boys, man, you know what? They're proud. Oh, they're
yeah.
proud,
They're
man.
giddy.
Yeah, man. They're wearing their colors, talking their trash. They're going to be all over the place. And why not? Why wouldn't they, man? You got to get out of jail free pass from the president of the United States. Now, maybe, I don't know what the criteria is. He's going to do it to everybody that, breaks the law on his behalf. I don't know. Maybe not. But it certainly doesn't start out very good. Riley Casper from Saxon. 37 months. Pepper sprayed 3 cops so bad they undressed and went home. Wisco Paul, you are up. Welcome, buddy. What do you got for us? Hello, Paulie. Did we lose Paul? All right. We'll lose. All right, Paulie, call us back, man. 855-75-CIVIC. Oh, okay. We're still waiting on Josh Call. Perhaps he'll be checking us in Wisconsin again, joining the lawsuit to challenge Donald Trump's executive order against birthright citizenship. But let's kind of wrap up. I think let's see the other Wisconsinites. Paul Edward Kovalik from Milwaukee. Man, Milwaukee. I live in Milwaukee. What did Paul do? Let's see. He was charged with entering and remaining in the restricted building. It's not like I've never entered and remained in a restricted building. I could be honest about this. Disorderly, disruptive conduct. Yeah, been
And
there.
you've also done that.
Disorderly conduct in a Capitol building. Now, I have not. Now, I have been arrested in a Capitol building.
Yes, you have.
You folks know that story from me
I've
years
seen that
ago.
video.
You see?
Yeah.
Well, there's an example of the man coming down on me for no reason.
Oh my God.
And you wonder
he
why.
made a beeline for
I
you.
know. You wonder why I am the way I am. You know,
There's a reason. There's a backstory.
There's a reason for that. Oh man, what else we got? Colin Wire from Plover, one of the 11 J6 rioters pardoned by Donald Trump. Let's see, entering restricted building, a lot of that going on, disorderly conduct, parading, a lot of that. Pled guilty to entering and remaining in a restricted building, sentenced in October of 23 to 18 months of probation, 30 days local monitoring, $25 special assessment. $25, $500 restitution, $500 fine. And as protests go, there's worse things than entering a restricted building.
Certainly.
I'm just saying.
Beating cops.
Like beating the cops. That's bad. That's bad. Joshua Munn from Melrose. Welcome, Joshua. Pleading guilty to parading, demonstrating. Other charges dismissed. Sentenced to 36 months probation, a $10 assessment. $500 restitution, 60 hours community service. Oh, did he do the community service? That was back in October of 22, so I'm assuming that's been done already. Ooh, Joseph Catani from Colgate. Looks like he's in the crowd here, charged with civil disorder, assaulting, resisting, or impeding certain officers. Also charged with civil disorder, entering, remaining, picketing, parading. Pled not guilty to all charges. An open source video showed him pulling an officer's face shield up and down as the officer's head twists and turns. He then pushed his way into the Capitol building. Now, next time you folks are out and about and you're feeling a little frisky, go up and grab, if you see some cops out with some riot gear on, go and grab their masks and shake it side to side, up and down. See what happens. Do you think that's okay? I think that should be frowned upon. I think our officers shouldn't be assaulted for doing the job that they got to do. And I got lots of beef with police officers sometimes. You know what I'm saying? And I can acknowledge, man. I can acknowledge that. And in this case, I'm defending them because they deserve to be defended. Because they were defending Democrats, Republicans, independents, maids, whoever was in that building, man, they were there defending them. And those folks attacking that building were there at the request of Donald Trump, who just gave them a nice, sweet old pardon. God, it's got to be good to be on the inside. Charles Walters from Sparta. Some of the same things, entering pled guilty to entering, remaining, not guilty to all the other charges, had a bench trial, found not guilty of a felony offense, but guilty on a misdemeanor. He was scheduled for sentencing on January 7th. Apparently, according to the court records, Charles Walters from Sparta kicked through the fencing surrounding the Capitol, yelled and confronted police inside the Capitol throughout the afternoon and early evening, and only left the grounds at dusk when forced to by police. There you go. A list of 11 Wisconsinites pardoned, and by Donald Trump in his pardon from yesterday, the J6 rioters, insurrectionists. And honestly, trespassing, staying in the building, whatever. But hitting cops, attacking cops, pepper spraying cops, grabbing them by their face masks, twisting, turning, that's assault, man. Republican Party, the party of assault and battery. And I know, we're not going to change Donald Trump. Donald Trump's going to be what Donald Trump is. And these folks, I don't know. Do you think they're emboldened? I think they're emboldened.
Absolutely.
I think they're emboldened. The Proud Boys are emboldened. The lady with the pink hat, she's emboldened. The what would they call the guy with the hat? And I forget his name too. Chaz something, maybe, I don't know. He is emboldened. He's every one of them. I haven't heard anybody say, yeah, this was totally unjust and it should never have happened. And the fact those people got away with that, got into that, attacked those cops.
Well, of course they did. Trump got away with everything that he did.
Ransacked the Capitol.
Why shouldn't they?
Well, why shouldn't they? Well, of course, there was no cavalry that day.
No.
Weird how that is, man.
Weird.
Everything, all the things that happen, there's always the cavalry, but not on the day that Donald Trump brings his supporters down to the Capitol. And now 11 Wisconsinites, I'm sure they've learned their lesson. And if you haven't, then now you got a free pass. I guess. Maybe you learned your lesson. I hope you do. Hope you don't do that. Riley Casper from Saxon, pepper spraying cops until they went home. All proud of it. He put it on Facebook, man. I mean, it's It is now the Republican Party, and these folks are now out. They're out, man, letting violent criminals roam the streets. That is exactly what Donald Trump just did. So, we have to acknowledge those things, and we can move on to the other topics and other things. There's plenty to get to. But don't let the megas get away with it. Don't let the politicians say, I didn't see the video, or I didn't know that someone was violently attacked. Never take that, man. Never take it. Always tell them the truth. Stand up. Truth to power. All the time, every time. We could talk about lots of issues, but you know what I always say? Never take BS from anybody. Come back with us, 855-752-4842.
I'm not alone 'cause the TV's on, yeah. I'm not crazy 'cause I take the right pills every day. And dress clean your conscience.
Welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show, 855-752-4842. Having a little fun while we can. You know what's going on here,
You
man.
gotta, man.
Dominic's back in the badge over here, man.
It's a weird day.
It is
a weird day, everyone.
It is bizarro world. 855-752-4842. We got some texters, got some callers. Always try to give the callers the priority. Mark from the SAC, you have the priority. We'll get to the texters next. 855-75-CIVIC. Hey, Mark, welcome. What do you got for us?
Yeah, thanks, guys. I wonder how many of these now pardoned guys are going to monetize their imprisonment and make a small.
They do that anyway,
Come
man.
out with the new crypto coin.
Yeah, they're going to do that anyway.
But I mean, maybe Josh Call should say, well, that he was actually being kind of kind to the Wisconsin insurrectionists here, the 10 fake electors. Yeah, maybe just drop the hammer on those 10 fine folks right there and arrest them, throw their asses in jail because they are a flight risk because they'll flee to some Republican state where there's no attorney general and because that's just the way it is. And Trump, you can't pardon them because it'll be state charges, and they can enjoy the penal institutions of the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Mark. And there are those state charges, and we in Wisconsin and other states as well. We're still working on AG call. Perhaps if we don't get him this segment, we're gonna have to bump him till maybe the 5:30, because in the next segment, the top of the hour, John Nichols from The Nation, from the Cap Times, we're gonna catch up. We haven't talked in a few weeks. So looking
Not
forward
since before the election,
I
man.
know. I'm looking forward to catching up with John Nichols in the 5 o'clock hour. But in the meantime, let's keep going on the lines. 855-752-4842. Talk or text. Joe from Madison. Welcome, Joe. What do you got for us?
Hey, Dom. I had made this point on Maggie's show, and I want to reiterate it, which is, number one, where are the cops? I mean, I've heard from the Capitol Police saying they feel incredibly betrayed.
Yeah.
But where are the cops in the rest of the country?
Mm-hmm.
Is this okay? I mean, where's the fraternal order of police? Why aren't they out in the streets? Why aren't they have signs? Where are the editorials? Why aren't they appearing on news programs? I mean, I heard that Milwaukee cops organization said no comment. Okay. Then silence is consent.
Yes, it is.
Silence is consent. So
Yeah.
apparently this is A-okay. If you aren't going to raise a ruckus about this and say this is not acceptable as part of my job, then people are just going to go, well, when it comes to political debate, I guess it's okay to pepper spray a cop. Because as long as if it's A-okay for Trump, and then it's A-okay for anybody else. If they don't get up and make a fuss, they are saying that this is okay. And it ought to be their families. It ought to be their friends. I mean, it's okay because it was on behalf of Trump. Man, that stuff can turn in an instant. And if you don't put your line in the sand and say this is not acceptable to be bear spraying cops and beating them with flagpoles, I mean, this stuff can turn any which way.
I know. And that's the scary thing about it, Joe. And thank you so much for your perspective. Always appreciate hearing from you. There's no upside to this. There's a reason why, for the longest time, the Republicans tried to hold on to that mantle of law and order, because people like a little order. They think that there should be consequences if random criminals start beating police officers, regardless of the reason. But now apparently it can be, qualified. If you do it on behest of Donald Trump,
Then it's all good.
Then it's fine. It's fine. And to Joe's point, the police unions, all those folks that would normally back Republicans, not all of them certainly, but the state, the locals, all that stuff, and the sheriffs, your constitutional sheriffs. I know you guys are out there. We're in their scene right now. That cat's one of them. You know what I'm saying? You down with this, guys? Asking for a friend. You go on duty, and someone in the taxi you pepper sprays you, beats the hell out of you. You think that person should be pardoned? Because that's what you're saying. I mean, if it's not even you, that's never going to happen to me. All right, how about somebody you love? Sooner or later, you're going to get to somebody you care about. At what point does it not become okay? Of course, the point is it's never okay. Regardless of your political persuasion or how motivated you are, there's got to be consequences to those violent kinds of actions. Not that they haven't happened before. They have. They will. They continue to. These are not consequences. These are endorsements. If a police organization has no comment, that is an endorsement. But then I also got to wonder, okay, nobody saw this coming. Well, at what point do we gauge the veracity, the validity, the judgment of those who tell us things? Like, I don't know, J.D. Vance like a week ago said Donald Trump would not pardon those who committed violence. Obviously. Vice President Vance. Obviously. Well, sorry, sir, but now you're a big fat liar, or you have no clue.
Which is worse?
Ignorance or corruption?
Coin toss.
Also, last week, Attorney General pick Pam Bondi. Quote, I'm not going to speak for the president, but the president does not like people who abuse police officers either.
Huh. Well.
Wah. So Bondi's credibility sucks.
What credibility?
Well, this is what I'm saying. And I get it. Nah, Dom, you don't believe in these people anyway. Oh, okay.
Fair point.
There's a reason for that, man. Because look at the stuff they're saying. Last week, it was obvious, according to J.D. Vance, your vice president, Mega, that Donald Trump would never do this. All you Senate Republicans, Tillis, who was the other guy from Texas? I'm sorry, I'm getting a little riled up here. All these Senate Republicans who had these issues and never saw it coming and didn't see the tape and, I didn't know that, cops were beaten by these folks. Well, your willful ignorance, sir, is unacceptable, because by doing so, what you have now done is endorsed that violence. We have now endorsed political violence, as long as you're doing it on the right side. And that is some twisted stuff, and we can never, ever, ever accept that, even if it means we got to back the badge, baby. Hey, come back with us. John Nichols from The Nation and the Nation and the Cap Times going to join us. You can hit us up as well, 855-752-4842.
15.
Broadcasting across the state of Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and around the world on the Civic Media app. This is the Dom Salvia Show. And now, here's your host, Dom Salvia.
And welcome to the Dom Salvia Show. Thank you so much for listening. You can always be a part. 855-752-4842. 855-75-CIVIC. Got Jess PS on the board, and jazzed as hell to introduce to you our next guest, John Nichols from The Nation and the Cap Times here locally. Friend of ours, John, it's been a while. Welcome.
Hey, it's good to be with you, brother.
Hey, good to be with you, brother. It's been a long time. How you holding up after this election, man?
Well, I think I might have preferred a different result. Look, in the overall scheme of things, I've seen wins and losses and good results and bad results. This one was, on the numbers, not as bad as I think it was initially portrayed as.
Yeah.
Harris actually came within about 1.5 million votes. The Congress is close, etc. But in the fundamental reality, a close election or not, I think you're seeing the play out of it now, and It's going to be very rough for a lot of Americans. And, I think people will come to regret it, regret the result. But at this point, I think looking back at the election is perhaps a little less consequential than looking forward.
Certainly. John, a lot to talk about with regards to the executive orders that were released by the current president. But also, Joe Biden issued a few pardons on his way out the door. Some I would question. Some I think or the family one's a little weird. The Fauci and the J6 committee is not quite clear. Leonard Peltier, I think, certainly deserved. What was your thought on how President Biden wrapped up his administration, John?
It wasn't well, frankly. I mean, look, in fairness to Biden, he gave a pretty decent farewell address. And there were elements of that were way undercovered, much like Eisenhower. He warned about things in the future that we should be concerned about, particularly the sort of unregulated growth of AI, things like that, the reality of oligarchy in this country. But in many of his own actions, he did things that I think really cut against the sense of the man. And there was a sense of Biden as a decent guy who kind of, his great strength was a willingness to abide by the rules, even when that was difficult. I think a lot of his pardons called that into question, at least for some folks. There's defenses. People make defenses for everyone he gave. Mm-hmm. But I think at the end of the day, I don't think that he historically will be served well by the record of all those pardons. And I guess this is what I'd say. I think the Leonard Peltier was a very good one, and one that no matter what you think about the history on this, it was time to let this man go home.
Yeah.
And I think also many of the releases for low-level offenses in the federal prisons were quite appropriate. I mean, we do have over-incarceration in a lot of instances, and so what he did there was good. Beyond that, I think we get to a place where we could talk about Biden and Trump and say that as a country, we simply need pardon reform.
Yes.
And I know that's not easy. I mean, I understand the constitutional challenges and all the others, but I do think the pardon power has gotten to the point where it is abused more than it is honored. And so if it was left to me, I would look for a bipartisan move to be able to just get rid of it, to eliminate it in at least most senses, or to create a much more sensible structure for how to do it. I do want people to have the option of clemency or commutation of pardons. I think that's good. But when it is left so much to the whim of an individual president, I just think we see abuses all over the place.
Great thoughts. John Nichols from the Cap Times, of course, The Nation, joining the Dom Salvia Show. Thank you, John, for doing so. As we move on in our discussion to perhaps now the Donald Trump's inauguration. The optic, John, of the three wealthiest men in America sitting behind Trump, $1 trillion dollars between them all. What Bernie Sanders, we have a mutual affinity for Bernie Sanders. He pointed it out. What's the takeaway from that, in your opinion, John?
Well, I think the takeaway from that is the most powerful and important takeaway of the last few days. The Trump administration is, kind of unapologetic in the fact, or about the fact, that this is the arrival of a fully oligarchical government. This is a government that literally tells members of Congress, you can't bring guests to the inaugural, but tells billionaires, yeah, you can. And the seating arrangements, everything was just so communicative, right? It told you the reality of where we're at. And look, here's the truth. We know this. Since the founding of the country, we've had elements of oligarchy. We've had elites who are very, very powerful and who've been able to get away with a lot of stuff, right? That goes back all through the history of the country. But the good thing in this country was that historically, presidents were a little embarrassed by that. Yeah. You know what I mean? They tried to create the image, at least, that they came from humble roots. A few of them did. But the reality is that I think this ostentatious display of wealth and the power of wealth and the influence of wealth and the quid pro quos that are already occurring, I think that sends a terrible message, not just about the presidency and about our politics. I think it's a bad message for the country. Yeah. I mean, this is a country that was made strong by working class people who got up early and worked late and, followed rules and did their best to kind of do it right. And now we're seeing a situation where the message is, if you've got enough money, you can pretty much buy a place at the heart of government. That's not a healthy message for democracy, and it's one we're going to have to address at a fundamental level.
Folks are listening to the Dom Salvia Show. That is John Nichols from The Nation and the Cap Times. John, the money. It's always the money. I mean, and I think you're right. We've been, even before this one, humanity, always having that struggle between those that have the most and a lot and the rest of us trying to just get by, right? And hopefully have some semblance of individual and civil rights while our meager existence on this earth, right? But now it seems like, back in the day, John, if you wanted to, slide some money, you have to go buy all the books. You got to buy the Unintimidated book. You want to give Scott Walker's campaign a bunch of money without regulation. Or maybe you have a candidate, John, that owns a hotel, and now all the Saudis can come in and rent out all the hotels, and now that's how you're going to transfer some of that money that you don't have to claim as dark money. You have to claim it as any sort of campaign contribution. But now we got what? We got meme coins. Donald Trump releases his meme coin right before he ascends to the presidency. And what is going to stop anybody or any country from getting into Donald Trump's good graces by simply going out and buying the meme coins, John?
Well, at his press conference today, the president said that they were trying to figure out how much he had made in the last few days. And one of the reporters was saying it was a couple billion. And Trump's response was he was up there with, folks from Oracle and other big multinational corporations, OpenAI and such. And he said, well, that's just trivial to these people, right? It's just chump change for these folks. And so we have a president of the United States who is now saying to the American people, oh yeah, picking up a couple extra billion, that's nothing. It's barely worth noting. And the trouble with that is that, as you say, you open up the door to a circumstance where the presidency of the United States is not seen as the greatest honor of someone's life, right?
Right.
The chance to serve their country and serve their people. But it is, in fact, a chance to get very, very rich, right? To literally put yourself and your family into another economic orbit. And I got to tell you, I think that does damage. It's damaging with Trump, and we know why we're worried about that. But I think it's damaging to both parties, presidents of all backgrounds. because if you lower the standard, right, you end up with a situation where, it's just going to become accepted that you get into that office and you try and make money in some way. You find out some avenue to do it. And then if that translates over to the Supreme Court, right, which we have seen members of the Supreme Court having, very troublesome relationships with very wealthy people, members of Congress, etc., you end up with a situation where the whole of our government seems so corrupted that would it be any wonder that people just give up on the thing and even start to give up on democracy because they believe, just no good can come of it. If you get to that point, there's very little that is more dangerous or damaging to a country because people just lose faith in the integrity of their leaders. They expect their leaders to cheat them to try and get ahead. And just to give a context for it, how do you imagine a Jimmy Carter would do in a situation like that?
Yeah. Folks, you're listening to the Dom Salvia Show. John Nichols. John, the corruption and the grift and the greed, it hurts the country in multiple levels, in many ways, in different arenas. And one of the things that concerns me is if you're so worried about padding your pockets and working on the next scheme to get your next billion, and I've seen, John, the numbers, of course, again, this is the meme stock, is not cash in hand. You can't go out and buy a beer with Trump stock, this meme coin thing, but like up to 50 billion. I've seen some really, really big numbers in that regard. But my point being, John, is if there's a limited amount of time and lots of folks, as they get to the presidency, they age quickly because there's lots of crises, lots of things going on. If your main goal and your concern is about getting paid, what's going to slip through the cracks, John? On a national security level, on a policy level, on all sorts of different levels. When the president and his staff and his cabinet are spending time trying to pad their pockets, they're not doing anything to further advance the welfare of the rest of the country, and in fact could be very much harming them because they don't have their eye on the ball. John, do you have some more time with us for a few minutes on the other side?
Love to keep talking.
All right, folks, you're listening to the Dom Salvia Show. That is John Nichols from The Nation and the Cap Times. Come back with us. We'll continue the conversation. Also want to get your take, John, on the executive order with regards to the birthright citizenship. Can a president, by executive order, just do away with constitutional amendments? Stick around. We'll be right back.
"30 seconds."
honey, you need it. I'm gonna give you my love. I'm gonna give you my love. Oh, want a whole lot of love. 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 You better love.
And welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show, 855-752-4842. Continuing our conversation with John Nichols from The Nation and the Cap Times. John, thanks for sticking around for a few more minutes. Certainly appreciate catching up with you, my friend. Before we went to the break, I was lamenting call it the opportunity cost of an administration so hell-bent on getting paid that they're not paying attention to anything or everything else. And that can certainly cost us in many ways other than monetarily. Before we move on other topics here, John, any comments on that?
Sure. I think your insights are pretty good. I think you've got to divide it into two categories here. One is the cost, the impact of a circumstance where those in power knowingly act in the interest of money, right?
Yep.
And so it's not bribery in the traditional sense, but it is a knowledge that they're going to make more money. They're going to be better off if they support or sustain certain people, certain policies, certain corporations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a damage in and of itself. But what you're talking about is also real. And here's where I think it becomes a serious issue. It permeates an administration. It's not just the president or the vice president sending out coins or doing something that makes some money.
Yeah.
It's also everybody in the administration, right? They're all looking to get ahead, to profit off this situation because it seems that that's what's rewarded, that's what works. In a situation like that, the entire governing process becomes at odds with the better interests, the better angels of the American experiment. That's a really dangerous thing for democracy.
John, as we talk about the billionaire influence on this administration, I mean, just being right out there, the oligarchy, as we were warned from Biden on, and it's just right in front and center, literally front and center in the Trump administration. You know, some of the criticisms I've heard from conservative callers and listeners as well. You know, Joe Biden took billionaire money. John, what's your reaction to that?
I think there's truth in it. I think the whole of our political process is awash in so much money that it has an influence on the process. It has an influence on the Republicans and the Democrats. And if we deny that, we're fools, right?
Yeah.
Because I can tell you, if you just look at last year's Democratic campaign, I mean, obviously, I was sympathetic to Harris.
Right.
I think there's a whole bunch of reasons why I want her to be president of the United States. But that doesn't mean I thought she ran a great campaign. I think there were a lot of mistakes made in that campaign, and many of the worst mistakes had a relationship to money, right? It was this question of, do you run a genuine progressive populist campaign along the lines of, going all the way back to Robert M. La Follette, at his best, Franklin Roosevelt, all the way up to Bernie Sanders? Do you run that kind of campaign, or do you run a much more cautious campaign where you're out there appearing with Mark Cuban and other billionaires and stuff like that? I mean, you have to make a choice. And I think that both parties, Republicans very easily, Democrats perhaps a bit more grudgingly, but I think both parties bend far too much to big money, and it has an impact on the whole process. So to your conservative callers, I would say, I mean, first and foremost, you understand, it's not a defense to say that the other guys do it. It should be something they recognize as a problem for the entire system.
And that it is, the outdo influence. John Nichols from The Nation and the Cap Times for just a couple more minutes. John, the leadership, I guess, in the Democratic Party, one thing, and the actual DNC chair race. A couple of weeks, we're going to find out who that's going to be. Faz Shakir is thrown in here as of late. Of course, we have our own Ben Wickley here from the great state of Wisconsin. Also, a couple others. What's your thought on that, John? You got anything you'd like to share as far as who you would like to see at that role?
Well, look, I've known Ben Wickler since he was 12. So, I mean, literally. So, I used to write letters to the Cap Times. And so obviously, I think as a Wisconsinite,
Yeah.
I have sympathy for Ben Wickler. I know Faz Shakir very, very well. In fact, I think he's a brilliant organizer, and there's a lot of things he's done that I think are super important as regards use of media, things like that. Ken Martin up in Minnesota, a decent guy who started out as an aide to Paul Wellstone. So I can say nice things about all of them. The one thing I would say to people is this, that if we're serious about this thing, you have to ask, what do you want in a chair of the DNC? They're all going to go out and raise money. We know that. I don't think it's necessarily good, but they're going to do it. They're all promising to make the state parties stronger, to invest more in a 50-state strategy. That's good. That's very, very important. I think basically they get a lot of stuff. But the real core question is, who of these people can go out immediately on February 2nd, the day after the choice is made, and start to excite folks, to start to get that Democratic message across? And I will say that as somebody who lives in Wisconsin, I have seen Ben Wickler do that very, very well.
Yeah.
And so I think when people weigh all the strengths and weaknesses of these candidates, I'm not going to tell people who to support. I'm just going to say that from my perspective, what I know is that I know that Ben Wickler is hyper energetic and really good at kind of getting on TV, getting on radio, getting messages across. And at the end of the day, I do think that that is maybe the biggest qualification, right? The one you look for the most, because there's very little time to start getting that message framed and getting it out in an effective way.
John Nichols, last 60 seconds. Then who do you see as the leader of the elected Dems? If you were going to look at who's in office right now, who did you look to?
Well, it should be Hakeem Jeffries, right? And that's because he is just on the edge of having a majority in the House, right? It's so close there. So Jeffries has to step up in that sort of unique intersection of being both a media leader, somebody who speaks, right, is forward, but also who is finding those policy moves that'll get you ahead and can make things work. Now, I think Jeffries has to fill that role. I think it's hard, but I would hope that he does, because I think for the Democrats, that's really important to have somebody who is at once a public face and also able, hopefully, to achieve some legislative goals.
John Nichols from the Cap Times and The Nation magazine, friend of ours. Thank you so much, John. Awesome catching up with you. We'll talk again real soon. Folks, this is the Dom Salvia Show. Come back with us, 855-752-4842.
10.
Welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show. Thank you so much for listening, hanging out, being a part. You can join us here, 855-752-4842, 855-75-CIVIC. Thank you so much to our most recent guest, John Nichols from the Cap Times here in Wisconsin. Of course, the nation nationally. Known John for a long time. Always appreciate his perspective and catching up with him. Couple of issues that I want to get to, items perhaps that are maybe related, maybe not. I made some notes. I made notes. I can actually kind of read them.
Oh, wow. That's new.
I know. And I realized that I'm not the only one with this thought. And this is what I mean. Now, Washington Post, Catherine Rampel reporting, Trump finds a new way for foreign governments to pay him off. Crypto. The sub-headline, Trump's crypto coin is little more than a whiz-bang Ponzi scheme. Now, you can get into the article. Of course, she talks about what this is and what it means and what the values or lack thereof is and so forth. But my point is, look at it as, without even getting into the details, as a conduit. That's all. It's just a conduit. Think about it as a conduit. Think of it as like a fancy way for, foreign entities to give Trump money, like pretending to rent out his hotel rooms, those kinds of things. But as Catherine Rampel starts off her article, the era of shakedown economy has officially begun, and it started with something called a presidential call it crap coin. No, I'm not making it up. The shakedown economy. And I was thinking to myself, man, what a way to funnel. What a conduit. And I didn't write down shakedown. I wrote down like racketeering. See what I'm saying?
Potatoes.
Right. It's a racketeering. It's corruption. Call it extortion, perhaps. Could it be something like that? Extortion?
Yeah.
Racketeering? And why extortion? Why racketeering? Well, if you're Donald Trump and you're trying to make money and you can use the policies of this country to shake down, to extort money from others, well, how are they going to give it to you? They could stay at the hotel, I guess, or they could buy your meme coin.
Right.
And what kind of policies would that be? Well, call it, I don't know, 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get 25% tariffs in Canada and Mexico. Unless, of course, maybe you buy some Trump meme coin, and we'll see what happens. And the thing is, we'll never know. That's the concern.
No, this is the ultimate in dark money.
Right. We will never, ever know. And what other policies that we've heard about? Well, one of them is certainly concerning. And that is, and bear with me here, let's think this through. And that is declaring the cartels terrorists, declaring the Mexican cartels as terrorists. And that would allow for, certain things, according to the Washington Post. As he signed an executive order, that would allow them to do what? List of foreign people that you couldn't do business in America with, right? Those kinds of things. They've done this with other organizations, obviously, as well. Most of them politically inclined. Think of Al-Qaeda, those kinds of things. MS-13 and all that. If Trump's stated concern is specifically drug trade and immigration, well, you're not going to bomb the immigrants, right? We're not shooting the immigrants. I mean, at least not today. At least not today. Now, perhaps the folks that Donald Trump let out of prison will all sign up to be volunteers for his new round them up and keep them in Mexico policies. But the cartels, if they're the producers of the drugs, let's call it. Well, obviously Mexico and Canada, I mean, these are allies of ours. We share borders, we share economies, we share trade agreements, all sorts of things. We have easy ways to get in and out of the countries and so forth. If you're going to, as a president, send in SEAL Team 6 to someplace you believe to be a drug origination, a manufacturing facility, well, are you going to engage with the host country in doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe you didn't if it was Pakistan. You're going to get, Osama bin Laden. Certainly not. But we're talking about like Mexico. This is Mexico. We go to Mexico. We have our trade with Mexico. We have lots of autos and whatnot built in Mexico. We have a great relationship. Well, with the exception of the Gulf of America. Listen, they're our neighbors and they're our business partners. I think they're our number one or number two trade partner. So let's just be realistic about this. If you're Donald Trump and you're going to label these cartels as terrorist organizations and then unilaterally start making strikes, well, you're going to piss off the Mexican government. You're going to kill innocent people. And all you're doing is trying to address the supply side of the problem. I'm pretty sure the Mexican government and Mexican citizens don't want American special forces killing them.
Probably not. Sounds like a fair bet.
Just saying. And I'm also sure that as only one side of the equation it is not talking about distribution.
Right.
Production and distribution. And on that side of it, there's lots of Americans in this business, man.
Yeah.
What if, I want to, literally think about this for a minute. What if the Mexican government said, hey, okay, well, you're going to attack the manufacturing facilities, let's call it. Well, we're going to attack the distribution.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, what? You want Mexican special forces rolling into Texas, rolling into Florida, into Miami, rolling into Southern California, and executing, targeted raids on whatever they think might be something breaking the law? Does that seem like a logical step in any sort of serious effort to curb the manufacturing and distribution of illicit substances as well as human trafficking? Let's just all willy-nilly go nail at each other what we think might be the case? Or do you think that there should be some adults in the room and governments that would work together? Wow. And I heard some of this from the Foxies. I think Bill Barr as well. The conversations are just quite alarming. One of the Mexican government, wow, they're too corruptible. And they're too corruptible. It's too easy. I mean, it's just too easy. The corruptible cartels and this is Bill Barr. The cartels are corruptible and they have the money to bribe. That was literally Bill Barr's comments today on the Foxies. So
they're too corruptible, too easily corruptible.
What? Right?
Come on, man.
All right, now let's think of these words. And Catherine Rebel wrote shakedown, and I have, racketeering, extortion. I have another one here that I can't quite read, but it's I think it starts with a P, maybe an R.
Prostitution.
Racketeering. Oh, I already said that. But it's a shakedown. So no, I certainly don't want to see American forces going, targeted raids into Mexico any more than I want to see Mexican forces doing targeted raids into the distribution channels in America. And let's not forget, the reason that we have these drugs coming here is because Americans want them.
Right.
Let's just be frank about that. And I don't think that, it would be okay for the Mexican government to come and start killing not only the distribution lines, but, the end consumers. Well, they do that in some countries where there's a death penalty for drug consumption, drug trade. Well, it doesn't. Is that the world we want to live in? Well, I don't think so. Not me, And don't, Bill Barr, talk to me about the corruption abilities of government, because Donald Trump right now is leveraging that. So if he says he's going to attack, he's going to put this terrorist moniker onto the drug cartels, whatever that means, and whoever that means, and by what means do you address that, assess that, and name them? And by what authority do you go into this country and into a sovereign nation like Mexico, as a trading partner, our neighbor, and start waxing and killing whoever you think might be in this group. Now, certainly it would seem like we'd need some sort of additional cooperation in that regard. Not to go after it willy-nilly. Not to go after it without the advice and consent of, I don't know, call it the Mexican government.
Let's call it the American government as well.
Are we? And what's the outcome? If we don't, if there is a supply, and come on, all you Republicans, you're capitalists. if there's a supply lag, well, prices go up. Demand might go down, but if demand is there, it will go down. When the prices go up too high, then demand will break off. But there is a huge demand for drugs in this country. Full on stop. And from my own personal experiences, sold a little weed when I was in college. You know what I mean? and most of it was that, chunky, nasty, seedy brickweed that probably came from Mexico. Just saying. It wasn't great. Nowadays, on legal weed, it's amazing. It's amazing. The stuff is tested. There's no mold. There's it's just there's no seeds. I mean, when was the last time you went to a dispensary and found a seed in anything that you bought? Well, folks, let me tell you, very rarely happens. And call it maybe my personal experience in my old college days as it being in the distribution side of this equation. And a lot of that distribution, most of that distribution was to white folks.
Well, yeah.
People around La Crosse, let's call it.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Stomping grounds.
My old stomping grounds. So we have to acknowledge the demand. And that's not, I mean, come on. I mean, look at Trump Jr., allegedly. And come on, there's cocaine found in the Biden White House. I mean, there is demand for these things. And I don't know, and certainly when you talk about car bombings, beheadings, and all those kinds of things that happen, is it any better if it's done for money versus for a God? No, any of those actions take away the rights, the individual liberties of the person that is being murdered for whatever reason. The dead people don't care what your reason was. You know what I'm saying? So I don't make much of a difference on it, other than it's a business, and it can, like any business, can be regulated and curbed and supported. Now, maybe there's some drugs people say, oh, that's just too much, it's too hard, and I get it. And Oregon did this experiment, and I think Portugal, some other countries, maybe some South American countries as well, have very lax drug enforcement policies.
Well, sure, they went the route of full decriminalization for drugs, and it is what it is.
Listen,
what it is.
Addiction's a bitch, but I would consider it when you get to that point, and the things that come of that. Those are healthcare issues. Those are not law enforcement issues.
Absolutely.
To my personal opinion. Now, I know Oregon's kind of backpedal a little bit on that because of. You don't want people, shooting up heroin in the middle of the street.
Yeah, probably not.
I mean, just saying. Some places you can't have a beer outside.
Time and place, people.
Time and place. But there's a demand, and we have to acknowledge that. And I don't think that, and again, are they terrorist organizations, or are they just unregulated businesses?
Well, I mean, if you want to look at unregulated businesses, look no further than Trump himself.
Right. So is it possible, knowing that it's not just me, it's the journalist over at the Washington Post, other folks having these same thoughts. Well, it's not just, the cartels would come in and start renting out the hotels. But what if it's extortion? Right? What if it's racketeering? What if it's protection money? That's what it was. Overtime protection.
Oh.
It's protection money. We're gonna talk a little bit on the other side of this break about TikTok. And Donald Trump was all about TikTok until Donald Trump wasn't all about TikTok, and now he's all about TikTok again. Why is that? Well, if you look at the conduit of the money, if you look at it in the sense of payoffs, bribery, protection, think mafia, think organized crime, because that's the way this thing fits together the best. Is it going to bomb the cartels, or is it just going to take 10% off the top? Come back with us, 855-752-4842.
Can't you see the wonder in the waiting? Oh, it's
30. Ten.
And welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show. Last segment of the day. If you got something to say, hit us up right now. 855-752-4842. Callers, see you. Holy, be patient. Want to wrap up my last thoughts as we tie up this whole, let's just look at this as a racketeering organized crime organization. It makes everything seem a little more, I don't know, acceptable, or at least clear. And why do I say that? Well, let's look at TikTok, for example.
Let's look at TikTok.
Donald Trump, back in, let's see, when he was still the president of the United States, he issued an executive order dated, I have it in front of me, thank you, Jess.
You're welcome.
August 6th of 2020. Yada, 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 yada. TikTok, quote, the United States must take aggressive action against the owners of TikTok to protect our national security. And I hereby order, yada, yada, yada. Aggressive action against the owners to protect our national security.
That sounds like a pretty serious matter.
He made an executive order, man. He put out a statement August 6th of 2020. 4.5 years later, at the bequest of Donald Trump, Congress, along with some Democrats, banned TikTok. The Supreme Court
was a bipartisan
upheld
movement.
the ban. And now Donald Trump's backpedaling? We have a little cut from Donald Trump on the TikTok. Let's play it, please, Jess.
Sure. Just starting with a question. It's a little hard to hear, but why did he reverse his stance on TikTok?
You wanted to block TikTok. Why did you change your mind?
Because I got to use it. And remember, TikTok is largely about kids, young kids. If China's going to get information about young kids, I don't know. I think, to be honest with you, I think we have bigger problems than that. But when you take a look at telephones that are made in China and all the other things that are made in China, military equipment made in China, TikTok, I think TikTok is not their biggest problem. But there's big value in TikTok if it gets approved. If it doesn't get approved, there's no value. So if we create that value, why aren't we entitled to like half?
Why aren't we entitled to like half?
Okay, welcome to the shakedown.
Yeah.
Welcome, baby. I mean,
We're
come on.
here.
This is it. This is straight up.
He's not even hiding it.
He's not even hiding it.
Why don't we get like half?
You know who else doesn't care about whether or not kids' information gets out? Jeffrey Epstein. Donald Trump's old buddy.
Right.
What? All of a sudden, it's a national security issue. Can't have all this data. Now, today, when we talk about the value, when the TikTok CEO was sitting next to Tulsi Gabbard yesterday at his inauguration, well, now it's about 50%. How are we going to make that money, huh?
Well, and you also heard him. He got to use it.
I got to use it.
In the campaign, TikTok was a prolific spreader of disinformation.
Yes, we can't get rid of that. I
Absolutely
need that.
not.
It worked for me.
That got him the election.
I mean, he's a TikTok promoter right now, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
And TikTok promoted him. Thank you, Mr. Trump. Help us, Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump did it. Come on, folks. This is a shakedown, man. This is a deal. And if you think he's doing it here, of course he's doing it. And that's the problem with the corruption. That's the way I see it. Of course he's doing it.
Of course.
And everything on every issue, every time. Because that's how you maximize your profit. Everything all the time. It's like an Eagles song. 855-752-4842. Annie from Watertown, you are up. Welcome, Annie. What do you got for us?
Listening to him last night about Gaza and North Korea, they've got great condo capabilities, lots of shoreline, and it's just like we've got this real estate guy, and he's just looking at all the people in the world as they're just renters, and he wants to buy them out, and there's nothing left in Gaza. Nobody wants to live there. There's no people left there anyway. We'll just, build some condos. It's just, we've just deserted everything that the founding fathers had in mind to improve and make better and be a great country.
A government by the people and for the people. Annie from Watertown, thank you so much. Not by the billionaires and for the billionaires. And what did we talk about yesterday? The many can overcome the money, right? We just got to be on point. Just got to accept the reality, man. It looks to me, and I know a little bit about something. Looks to me like this is shakedown city, man. So if it's going to start, if you see Donald Trump promoting something, saying something, doing these things, and just get all like, I don't know, like an executive order a few years ago about TikTok. And all of a sudden backing up, I got to use it. And my friends, I'm not just a user, I'm an owner. And I recommend TikTok for all of your misinformation needs. I mean, the guy is literally promoting it. So if you see a guy like Donald Trump taking wild swings on policies and those kinds of issues, your natural reaction should be, well, what's his angle? How's he making the money? That's it. And to Annie's point with Gaza, I mean, he's reiterating what his Jared Kushner basically said the same thing, his son-in-law, about Gaza a couple years ago.
Yeah.
That's prime real estate. So let's bomb the hell out of it, kill everybody. We'll bulldoze it all down and put up some Trump towers. You think that's what the people of Gaza, that's what the Palestinians are looking for, a Trump tower? Well, of course they're not, because, Donald Trump, he doesn't rent to the minorities. Folks, thank you so much for listening to the Dom Salvia Show. It's true, man. The Trump organization had a settlement in New York because they wouldn't rent to the black people. Tomorrow, you're going to end on doing something.
Yes, we are.
Tell me something nice.
Yes,
Tell me
we
something
are.
good. Because I like that. No, it's not really something good right now. I'm kind of mad about everything right now.
Yeah,
But
that's why we're going to do that tomorrow.
We're going to try to do it every day. I think we do it every day. Folks, thank you so much for hanging out with us and listening to the Dom Salvia Show today. I want to thank Maggie Dawn, a little overtime with Maggie Dawn right here on Tuesdays at 4 o'clock. But listen to her show Monday through Friday, 2 to 4 p.m., preceding this fine production. Thank you to John Nichols from The Nation, locally at the Cap Times. Now stick around. Pete Schwaba and the Nightlight is coming up next. Thank you, Jess. Have a great night, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.